All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, welcome to another edition of In the News. Let's just jump right into it. Now, I gotta start out with y'all president, because he ain't really having a great week, okay? His whole squad been going down one by one. It's like each domino continues to fall in this series of dominoes. And today, Manfred and Cohen were the fourth and fifth domino. And the funny thing about it is, Cohen didn't even go to trial. He just pled guilty like, look, I did it. Like, I did it. And that has to suck, because I know he's kind of looking at Trump like, yo, you cheated on your wife with a porn star. All I did was send the money to the girl to keep quiet, and now I got to go to jail because the money ended up being some campaign funds. Like, that sucks. I know he's pissed off. He didn't even try to fight it in court. He was like, yeah, I did it. Kind of like when you have siblings and you're used to blaming them for everything when you do something wrong, but they're not home at the time that you do something crazy. Like one time, my mom used to be on this diet one time, and so she had all these little Yoplait yogurts in the fridge, but the one rule she had was you could eat the yogurts, just don't touch the diet ones. Like, don't touch the diet ones. But they had this like key lime pie one, but it was a diet one, and I wanted that one. So I went ahead and ate it. Totally forgot my little brother was spending the night at his friend's house, and so nobody was home. So my mom came in, who ate and ate my good yogurt? Because, black folks, whenever we really value something, we put a good in front of it. Like, don't you be sitting on my good couch. Don't y'all come here walking on my good carpet. So she's like, who ate my good yogurt? Who ate my good yogurt? And I'm over here trying to blame Marcus, and I forgot Marcus wasn't even home. I was like, shoot. I did it, Mom. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm like, Lord, got cussed out that day. But anyway, sucks to be Trump. I said, your whole squad is going down. It's terrible, one by one. Go ahead and throw Sarah Huckabee Sanders in there. I know she's guilty of something. Lock her up, too. Goodness, the whole crew, that just sucks. Your team is supposed to have it together. You can't keep having somebody getting locked up every week for something. Reminds me, like, Set It Off. I always get pissed that all of them died in it, minus Jada. Because I always say, the one death that didn't make sense in Set It Off was Frankie. I don't know how she ended up in that big, wide, busy street when she knew that she was being chased by all those police. Okay, when you in the movies, when they're being chased, you're supposed to be on the sidewalks and in between trees and under the sewer. She's on the main street running. I'm like, how did you get caught? How? You saw the way Jada ran to that bus to Mexico like it was nothing, had that sombrero on and leaned low in the seat, like, was not playing. Anyway, that's that. Oh, I forgot to totally update y'all about my Gladys experience, because y'all know I've been gassing up Gladys night all last week. Listen, Gladys got it in. It was such a good concert. It was so much fun. Like, Gladys, I want to say this. Of her peers, well, Aretha's no longer here, but like Patty and Shaka and all of them, I personally think that Gladys's voice is the most intact. Patty still gets it in, Shaka still gets it in, but Gladys just, you had to be there. Like, literally every song she performed was probably almost better than when it was originally recorded. I was like, this is crazy. How does your voice do that at that age? Because once they start hitting the 70s, the power starts to fizzle out because it's wear and tear. But no, I mean, she was just pulling notes out of everywhere. I'm like, oh, Gladys. And the funniest thing is, old people start their concerts on time. Like, that concert started at 8 o'clock. That first little I was like, yo, like, I'm running to my seat. It's 8:01. I mean, she was already doing Love Overboard before I could get to my seat. But I mean, it was a good show. I had a great time. It was Gladys night, and it was the OJs. And the OJs got it in as well, too. I didn't know what to expect because I've never seen the OJs. But, I mean, they got it in, too. I mean, everybody was in good voice. Great bands, too. The OJs had, like, a whole brass section. I was like, y'all better get it. Only thing I didn't like, it was an outdoor concert at Wolf Trap. And so the audience was a very, it was much older, conservative, happy, wealthy white couples kind of audience. Of course, I'm like one of the youngest people in there because not too many people my age are running to go to a Gladys Knight concert. But the audience was so dry. They don't know how to have any fun. They got the band cranking and me and my godmama were in there just and then the rest of the audience is just sitting there. Oh, Midnight Train to Georgia. This was one of the favorites. This is the one Kenneth used to play on his way to school. I'm like, y'all are so boring. Then the ushers then told us we had to go back to our seats because we were you didn't want to stand up and dance in your seat because all the people behind you were all sitting down. So we went to the aisle and then people were, sir, ma'am, this way to your seats. I'm like, all right. But anyway, Gladys, that was a great, great concert. Dope show. And then, I don't know if you guys saw this Post Malone situation where his plane, I guess the tires exploded on takeoff and he had to make an emergency landing. And he was like live streaming while the thing was actually going on. I was like, that's some crazy stuff. And see, this is why I told y'all, like, if I am ever in a position to be famous, I'm never taking any kind of private jets or nothing, no private plane, nothing. I will fly commercial because it seems like everybody who flies on these small little private planes and stuff, they'll never make it back. I don't want to be one of those people. Like, I will be commercial, sitting right in coach. Like, goodness, like that crap is scary. I can't do it. Anyway, Janet Jackson, I had to shout her out. because I wanted to do a video about it, but I didn't get a chance to. I don't know if you guys saw the performance she had on Jimmy Fallon, but she killed that crap. You know, she has a new song that came out. I saw the video. I love the video too. I got lucky too because I don't know how it happened, but I ended up at TRL, which I didn't know still came on TV, and so I got to kind of sit at TRL when she premiered the video, and I feel like I saw two of y'all in there. But I didn't want to be that creepy person that runs up to somebody and be like, don't I know you from Twitter or YouTube? So I didn't do it. But like Brandon, I think I saw you, and I forgot the other person's name, but I feel like I knew like two of y'all. But anyway, they had me in the back behind the camera for some random reason. So I didn't really get, you weren't gonna see me on TV if you watched it. But no, it was kind of cool. Really cool experience. But no, that Jimmy Fallon performance was really, really good. It was actually dope. I think the cool thing about when these celebrities age gracefully, and I'm not just talking about physical looks, but just like how they perform and how they put out their art. Like the thing that works, I think, with Janet, especially as far as choreography, because people want her to still spin on her head and everything, and they keep forgetting this woman is 52. Somehow she's able to present everything in such a balanced way where it still works for her. So, you know, she's still dancing. She may not be dancing as hard as she was when she was 19, but she's still getting it in. Like she's still doing a whole lot more than pretty much everybody else that's out right now. So I mean, I enjoyed that performance. So if you want some entertainment for late night television, that was a great performance to watch. And the song I enjoyed as well. So good for you, Janet. Yeah, that was dope. Okay, then we get to Nicki Minaj. And man, she got a lot going on, y'all. It's a lot going on. And her situation is so intricate because there's so many different layers and all kind of crap. I'm like, this was the hardest story to try to follow and figure out what was going on. So, long story short, and if I mess this up, my bad. Nicki Minaj is unhappy with the rollout of her album because she feels that Travis Scott and his team purposely went out of their way to sabotage what was going on with her album. And she feels that a lot of people in the industry are just pretty much working against her at the moment. So she came out with her album. She said it was slated to be #1. That's what she stated. I didn't follow up and see what the projections and stuff were. But she said it was slated to be #1. And then Travis Scott and his team decided to do some kind of bundle deal associated with his tour. And in this, like, because a lot of artists do these bundle deals where, you buy a concert ticket and maybe you get a copy of the CD with it or something like that. But she's saying that in his bundle deal, there was no albums associated with it. It was like you got a sweater and that was it. And somehow that sweater got counted as an album sale. I'm not sure how true that is because that doesn't sound like something Billboard would recognize. So you guys can go and do the research and look it up, but it doesn't sound right to me. Billboard is pretty strict about their rules with a lot of things when it comes to physical sales of anything. They're a little bit more lenient with streaming because they still can't figure out a threshold to measure streams by. But with physical stuff or anything that's purchased on like iTunes or something like that, they're pretty strict on. But she's saying that he went out of his way to sabotage. And so all week she's been going off on everybody. Like even the whole promotional campaign of the album, even outside of just Travis, like every interview I've seen, she's just been irate in all the interviews, pissed off, yelling at everybody, cussing everybody out about everything. Plus, this is still coming off of everything that happened the week before with the other radio host that she was beefing with. And so it's just been a really odd time. And she called out Travis Scott on Twitter and was like, Kylie Jenner, it's her fault and the baby because they promoted something about, come see me, and now all the people went and got the stupid sweaters and it messed up my album sales and blah, 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 blah. And so on and so on and so on. And she's just been going off, and somehow she started talking about Harriet Tubman and this, that, and the third. And, she has her Queen Radio, and she was talking about that on Queen Radio. And she called Travis Scott whatever she called him. And she's just really been going off. And her argument was there's so many people that work against women in the industry, and so many people are against her. And then you also incorporate just all of the stan groups and the fan bases, and Cardi B this and Remy Ma that and all this other stuff. And so it's straight chaos. And she's really pissed about Spotify because she said that Spotify pretty much wanted to teach her a lesson. I guess when she was doing her Queen Radio show, I don't know if she was playing snippets of the album through Apple Music or something like that, but she said that Spotify felt that, she's going against, the relationship that they have because Apple and Spotify are competitors. So she's saying that Spotify purposely went out of their way to not give her a banner on the playlist, because if you have Spotify, sometimes when you go on there, you look at like the Discover weekly playlist, or you just go on there, you'll see the big name artists, they have a big banner sometimes when they have a project come out. And so she was mad about that, even though I think she has a banner on Spotify now. So it was a lot going on, a whole lot. And so she sold 185,000 copies of her album. 78,000 of it was pure sales. The rest came from the calculated streams and everything. So she was just kind of pissed off and been going off all week. My 2 cents. Like, I'm tired of just explaining this crap, man. Goodness, I don't even want to talk about this. But here's my 2 cents. I'm not really on either side of the argument because, one, I don't really follow Nicki like I don't have none of her albums. I don't really have any of her songs. I'm just not really into Nicki like that. But she's interesting to watch. But my thing is this: in the music industry, when the politics are bad, you're supposed to fight behind closed doors, but in the public, you never let them see you sweat. You do all the hard fighting in those offices and with the management and with the A&R and with the marketing folks. You do all the fighting with the execs in the back room. But when you step out in public, you never let them see you sweat. Because once people see your vulnerabilities, they use that against you. And in this day and age, because Nicki Minaj to me seems like somebody who's very invested in sales and what people say about her and what the fans and the stands and the haters are saying, because she's very like saturated in social media. Like I think she's a little too invested in comparison to some other entertainers. Like there's just certain things that I feel like if you're an entertainer, you can't give all of your energy to because it will burn you out. Like even this YouTube thing. Now, mind you, I'm not even like jumping like that on YouTube, but there's just there's a certain level that I don't pass on YouTube on purpose as far as my investment in it. You know, just for my own sanity, because nobody's messing up my sleep pattern at all. I don't believe in messing up my sleep for nobody. So I'm not going to be, in my comment section fighting with everybody who disagrees with me or fighting with everybody who's going to call me a name or try to make fun of my speaking voice or something like that. I don't have that kind of time. You don't like me, it is what it is. You still gave me a view. But, she's really invested in all that. And so she comes off as looking crazy. You're over here going off on all these different people and it just doesn't look good. And the thing for me, I just feel that a lot of the stuff she's pissed off about is so top tier, so only for people who sit at the top of the charts anyway kind of problem. So when she started talking about the banner with Spotify, I was like, do you know how many independent artists are just fighting and clawing to even get on one of those Spotify playlists so people can hear their music? And you over here going off because you didn't get a banner. Nicki, everybody knew your album was out. Everybody knew. It was no secret, especially if people are on social media, they know your album is out. And so my thing is this: you're supposed to keep your cool. It's kind of like when you're on a plane. You know what I mean? Like that's why when I'm on a plane, I always look at the flight attendants. As long as the flight attendants are cool, I'm cool. So when the plane is turbulent and this, as long as the flight attendants are cool, I'm cool. And I mean, that plane can just be, and them flight attendants will just be pushing that car, and they'll have the soda in it. Would you like ginger ale? And I'm just like, Jesus. But they be so cool because, bad English, goodness. But, they keep their composure because they've been trained to understand that turbulence is usually not going to bring a plane down. And so unless you see them flight attendants run to that strap seat and put them seatbelts on, you have no reason to panic. And so, the presentation keeps everything together. So by them keeping their cool on the plane, everybody else on the plane is cool. Because me, I told you, I fly a lot. And so, listen, flying kind of gets me shook sometimes. So, listen, sometimes when the flight is turbulent, I switch my playlist to gospel real quick. Like, okay, all right, Black Jesus, let's get it. But anyway, going back to my point, you're supposed to maintain your cool. So right now, Nicki looks insecure to people from the outside looking in. In my opinion, that's what she looks like to me. She looks like somebody who has been so used to always being on top, and now that she's being challenged a bit, because, of course, Cardi B's had a great year. And I think a lot of the numbers have to do with, or a lot of the interest in her numbers has to do with what Cardi B did. I think that's one of the things. A lot of people who don't like Nicki couldn't wait to run in there and say, oh, look at your numbers. You didn't do this, that, and the third. And so she just kind of looks pressed about a lot of it. So when she started talking about that Spotify banner, I was like, that's some real top 10 kind of mess. And then I felt like by her bringing in the argument of, okay, the women having to struggle in the industry and stuff like that, I think she has a point to that. But I just find it interesting that you're just now saying that when it finally doesn't work in your favor. It just doesn't look right. I could be wrong, Nicki fans, but just from what I'm seeing from the outside in. And the other thing is, the problems that she's fighting about, in my opinion, are not even really big problems. They're not anything super structural that will end her forever. Because listen, if we want to talk about structural problems in the industry, then that means we need to go to the book of Janet Jackson and the Dixie Chicks. We saw what happened with the Dixie Chicks. They said their 2 cents about George Bush all the way in another country where they were at a show with their fans, and somehow it got back to America. They got blacklisted from country radio. They had bomb threats at their tour, and pretty much they were done. They were one of the biggest girl groups in the world, not even just in country, but in the world, period. And they lost pretty much everything. And when they try to start back over, and they did have success and win some Grammys, when they try to go to tour, the venues were like, don't even ask us, can you perform here? You're not performing in the city of Dallas. You're not performing in the city of Houston. Don't even ask. You're not coming to Oklahoma City. You're not welcome here. Like, pretty much, they had to literally reestablish themselves and build a fan base in Canada, and pretty much build a fan base with college kids. They lost everything just because the Natalie girl in the group was saying that she didn't agree with what George Bush was doing in Iraq, which, ironically, half the country ended up being on the same page as her later down the line. And so I'm looking at what happened with the Dixie Chicks and how they lost everything. I'm like, Nicki, you over here fighting about a banner, and because you were number 2 on the charts. It's hard for me to almost feel bad, because I'm like, I can't. And then with Janet Jackson, you watched Janet Jackson listen, as a Janet Jackson fan, watching her career do that roller coaster is one of the most, it's a great study. It would be a great book to write for somebody who's like a music historian. That's a great kind of example to use of somebody who was on the top and how they had to rebuild everything. Like, Janet Jackson got banned from not only MTV, but got banned from radio. So she was banned from MTV because of the Super Bowl for all of 2004 until about 2008, 2009. Okay? Pretty much MTV and radio was her bread and butter for promotion. The thing about Janet Jackson was, because she was a visual artist and she had these really catchy pop tunes, she needed radio and she needed music videos to push her, because she didn't quite, people weren't flocking to Janet Jackson because she had a voice like Whitney. It was because she had a visual presentation and she had showmanship as a performer. And so Janet got banned from radio and from MTV. And so you watch that happen, and then she's a Jackson. You watch her go and be a punching bag for the media for years. Like, the one thing I will say, a lot of black women are the punching bag for the media. I think Nicki Minaj is one. I think Janet's always been one. I think Beyonce is one at times. I think Oprah's been one. Serena Williams is one. Michelle Obama's one. Did I say Beyonce? Like, Mariah Carey. Like, a lot of them are punching bags for the media, but Janet has always been one because of her last name, and so she's always had to deal with that. And then the situation where they thought Catherine was kidnapped and she had slapped Paris, and all that happened, and then she got vilified because she got pregnant and had to postpone the tour. And like, with all of that happened with Janet, and then the best example I could say, well, I'll get to it, but you never saw Janet lose her composure, or she always kept her cool. She did all the fighting behind the scenes. Her way of doing the fighting was, okay, let me get better management. Let me get people who can figure out how to market me without the support of MTV and without the support of radio. Because even today, she's still banned from 70% of the radio stations in America. So I'm not really sure how her new song would do, but literally that's what she's fighting on. But you've never seen her break her sweat. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff hurts her. She's never even addressed a lot of the things that's happened to her. And so she's like, forget it, let me focus and do my music and push out what I want to push out. I'll fight behind the scenes. And so she comes off looking distinguished and poised. And you fast forward, when people thought she was done and people had wrote her off, look where she's at now. I'm like, okay, she may not be where she was in the 90s, but I think of her peers, she's doing pretty well. And a perfect example with her, again, is that 20YO album. She was slated to be number 1, and this is so perfect because this really mirrors what she's talking about with Travis as far as Nicki. She was slated to be number 1, and literally once that projection was put out there, because Ludacris had an album coming out the same week as well, Ludacris's team did a markdown on Ludacris's album in the last 3 days of the first week sales. So in the end, Ludacris ended up edging out Janet Jackson by 3,000 copies of this album, because of course this is when people still bought CDs. So if you're some random person in the store and you're going to buy an album and you see Janet sitting there for $13.99 and you see Ludacris there for $6.99, and to be honest, at the time Janet wasn't really jumping anyway, because new artists had come out. Sierra was out and she was really jumping, and Beyonce had just had a really big album, and there were so many other people out, and Janet's singles weren't really catching on. Okay, well, let me get the Ludacris. And I'm like, all right, hey, turn up. And you didn't see Janet go and cuss Ludacris out on MySpace. Like, come on. So I just think Nicki has to understand it's all politics. And then with music, I think there's 4 main goals you're always supposed to fight for when you're coming out with a project. That's how you can keep your success, because first week sales are not that important, in my opinion. First week sales are just the sales that come from your diehard fans. Because casual listeners, they're not rushing to get your album on the first week anyway. They'll get to it when they get to it. And so I think Nicki forgot about that. When you're coming out with an album, there's 4 things you always want to remember. 1, your job is to keep your fans happy. You do whatever you do with the music, make the music great, keep your fans happy, make sure that you evolve, make sure you keep refreshed with the sounds, because of course there's going to be new artists that come out who might be in the same lane that you're in, and they may do things better than you, so you have to stay on top of your game, make sure your music is together. So 1, keep the fans happy. 2, keep the general public interested with positive press and positive everything like that, because the general public is going to, pretty much the general public operate like sheep when it comes to the music industry. There's this theory called the spiral of silence theory, and in this theory, pretty much an example would be like if you're in a room with 10 people that you really, really respect. These are 10 people that are going to help you get that promotion at your job you really, really want. And so you're trying to make sure you don't do anything to shake the table too much. And then all of them start saying that Burger King is the best food establishment in the world. They make the best burgers. And maybe you hate Burger King. You're a Wendy's kind of person. If all 10 of them are in that room and they're Burger King this, Burger King that, and it's the greatest and it's the greatest, and you're not trying to shake the table because you really want that promotion and you're trying to make a good impression, and this may be the first time you've met those people, you're not going to really say much about Wendy's. You're just going to be quiet, like, oh yeah, it's cool, because that spiral of silence theory makes you not want to be the odd person out. The general public works in the opposite manner when it comes to music and promotion and stuff like that. We work as a collective behavior, or we have a collective behavior that a lot of the general public shares. So when you hear or you see like an album sell 10 million copies, okay, it's not 10 million super diehard fans buying that album. Maybe it's 300,000 or 400,000 super diehard fans, and the rest came from the general public who were told that this is the hottest thing you need to go check out. And then because radio spoon fed it to you and this, that, and the third, people go and get it and they're like, cool. So you always want to keep general interest. And so by you going and cussing out everybody in all of your promos and all of your interviews and stuff, that doesn't make people want to buy your album. It's like, yeah, she's tripping. I don't want to buy that. And then the third thing that you want to do is you want to bring in new fans. And that comes indirectly from the second thing as far as keeping the general public interested. So when you go and you do those promo performances, or you go and you do those interviews, and they're good interviews, the general public who's walking around, the random soccer mom in Target who still buys physical CDs is walking and like, oh, I see Nicki Minaj has an album today. I think my daughter still likes her. Let me go buy it. If that same woman had watched, I don't know, Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, and you had a great interview, yeah, I remember her. I want to buy that. So you gain new fans. So when that general public comes and they hear that album and they like what they hear, you have new fans. And then the fourth thing that you have to do is sustain that interest and sustain that support from the masses over time. Because like I said, there's always going to be new people coming who can do exactly what you can do, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but sometimes they have better marketing teams. And so you have to stay on top of things in order to stay relevant. That's why so many people in the industry don't really have long careers, because it's a dog-eat-dog industry. And everybody's not going to kiss your behind the whole time. So now that you're in a position where you have a lot of people coming for your neck, people want to see how you're going to respond. So if you're flipping out on Twitter all day, rather than putting the energy into your actual project and pushing it, then it is what it is. Really, touring is where everything is at anyway. Album sales are not bringing in the revenue. The record labels know they're not going to meet the bottom line of any album from album sales in 2018 because nobody's selling. It's rare that people even go gold. That's why you have pure sales and streams now. Streams are not bringing in money. Streams it's just advertising. That's the money that comes in from streaming. You pushing a song and playing it is not bringing revenue to the record label in the same form that buying something on iTunes will, or buying a physical copy would. You know what I mean? So really, with the 360 deals and the touring and the record labels having their fingers and everything, they want the touring revenue. So my thing with Nicki is just, put the energy into pushing your album. If you want to push the album, push the tour. You need positive press. Right now, you look crazy. And it's not bringing new people in. Right now, you are only appeasing your fans. And so you've dropped the ball on the other three things that you need to push this album in order to be successful. That's just my 2 cents. Nicki fans, you can fight me with it. It is what it is. That's just how I feel. Goodness, this video is long. The last 2 things I want to talk about. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's been an influx of videos where you're seeing a lot of black children be sent home from school because their hair is deemed inappropriate. I've seen one with a young black girl who, she had kind of like some kind of braid sewed into her head, and the school sent her home because they claimed that it was unnatural and it went against the bylaws and the dress code that the school had. This was one of those like private academies, and so they sent her home, and there's a video of it. I was gonna put it in here, but I don't like posting traumatic stuff. I don't like posting stuff where you see like people crying or people hurt. Depending on the origin of where it comes from. So I didn't want to post that. But the video's out there. You can check it out. And so it's like a few minutes. And the girl's embarrassed. It's the first day of school. And she's in the office. And the parents are fussing at the school. There's another video I seen that came out last week. And it was a young boy who was in the same situation. A different school in the state of Florida. Like the girl was Louisiana. This boy was in Florida. And the school told him, I think he got expelled because he had dreadlocks. They were saying it went against, their dress code policy, this, that, and the third. Let me just give you my 2 cents on that. One, I think as black people, we have to I know we want our kids to have the best education and everything like that, but sometimes you need to recognize when a school is not for your child. Some of these schools, they don't want us there. And so we have to sometimes not try to seek validation from some of these institutions because they're not for us. They don't want us in there anyway. And it's tough because I know people want their children to go to a good school. But if the school has a bunch of policy that you deem as racist or anti-black, don't subject your kids to going to that crap, because that's how these kids end up losing their minds as adults, because they're in an environment every day where they're told that their very existence is incorrect. The existence of them growing their hair out is incorrect. I'm sure I shake the table every now and then when my company sends me out, because it kills some of these people that I don't have short hair. Like, if you don't know, I have really long hair. I don't like having short hair. But you know what I mean? You just want to get in the habit of making sure your kids are somewhere where they feel that they can be themselves and not feel that they're judged. And so I wanted to talk about the origin of some of these schools, because some people were like, oh no, it's just policy. If it's policy, you follow it. Cut your kids' hair or don't send them there. I'm like, it's not that. Because really, a lot of this is oriented in anti-blackness and elitism. So when you want to talk about a lot of these private institutions and private Christian academies, because I think both of them are like Christian academies, which really that ain't got nothing to do with Jesus. It's really, man, that's another conversation. Some of these people, the way that people will hide behind religion to do some vile stuff. I'm like, I don't know what heaven would look like, but if I got to spend an eternity with some of these people, I'm good. I'm so good. Like, I'm good. But anyway. The origin of some of these academies are rooted in two eras. One era was when you had the elite who didn't want common people going to school with them. So when you talk about life before 1954, when everything was still segregated, or even in the 1800s and everything like that, when you had the whole public school system and different things like that, a lot of very elite white people did not want poor white people going to school with their children. It wasn't even about black, because at some point black people couldn't even go to school to some extent, and some black kids already knew, don't even worry about it. But a lot of very rich elite white people did not want regular common people coming to their school. If you were some form of royalty or a lawyer or into politics or anything like that, or maybe even a merchant, you didn't want the people that were working on the farms having their kids go to school with your kids. You didn't want the kids who were one step from being a peasant going to school with your kids, and so that's where you had the creation of a lot of these really elite schools, and they would try to do different things to kind of keep those people out of the schools. And as you got to 1954 and you had the Brown versus Board of Education case be settled, and now schools were integrated, now black children had access to a lot of things that they never had access to before. And a lot of these people did not want black people going to their school. And so they started creating even more of these academies, or with the academies that were there, they would kind of go out of their way to really make these really, really over-the-top regulations, so it would be hard for a lot of black children to go to these schools. And so that's where you started getting into the dress codes with the hair and the this and the that, and you got to look a certain way, and you must wear a certain outfit. And a lot of times it's also socioeconomics. Certain families and certain groups of people, depending on where they come from, couldn't afford the uniform, couldn't afford to keep, a certain attire, a certain appearance. And so it made them ineligible to go to the school. And that's how a lot of these academies were able to keep certain groups of people out. But so you did have black families that had money, that could afford to go to these schools, and they could afford the uniforms, could afford all that. So they're like, well, we got to make it even harder for these kids to keep going there. So, let's really, zero tolerance for bad behavior, just anything to keep some of these kids out of the schools. And that's pretty much what has, flowed into some of these schools, even in 2018. Some of that stuff is rooted in some of the most racist nonsense. And I talked about that in my standardized testing video. I also talked about the same thing as far as the gifted program and special education. That was another thing. When a lot of black kids and other minority groups were now allowed to go to white schools, a lot of things started to come up, like the gifted program. People were like, oh, my kids are too special to go to school with you. My child is gifted. My child is gifted. My child is gifted because, when he pooped in his diaper, he cried. So he knows that he needs to be changed. He's gifted. He needs to go to a special school. And so you had a rush of white children get put into the gifted program. And then one of the things that they did with special education is they started making special education more than just physical disability. They also put it as far as behavioral patterns. So if your child didn't know how to sit down and be quiet, they were eligible for special ed. So what happened? You had an influx of black children put into the special ed program. So you had all these white kids going to the gifted program, all these black kids in special ed. And so it's pretty much the education system in this country is a hot mess. There's so many ways that people will go out of their way to try to make it difficult for certain children to even have an opportunity. And that's what that's about as far as those kids being kicked out by their hair. So you know what? Those kids, put them in a school where they belong, where they are going to be welcomed, where they can be themselves. Put them in an environment where they can feel empowered. Because if a child is not empowered in their academic institution, they're not going to do well anyway. I just know that from my own experience working with children. Anyway, the last thing I want to say is prayers up to all my people in Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. I saw you guys had that really bad earthquake. Because I know I have a lot of people who follow me from Trinidad, which is kind of cool. Like, it's interesting. I have people from Trinidad and Tobago that are always shouting me out. I'm like, that is so cool. Y'all are watching me for real? Wow. But yes, listen, earthquakes are no joke. That's probably one reason why I will probably never live in LA, because I can't do it. I remember I was in a bad earthquake in 7th grade. I'm still shook. Like, it just, I don't know, because they just show up. It's not like you get a warning like a tornado or a hurricane. You know, a tornado, you at least get a good 10 minutes to figure out what you want to do with yourself. Hurricane, you got a few days to even skip town and take some belongings with you. Forest fire, you got a few days to take some belongings with you. Earthquake, just be like, surprise, boom, and everything just starts shaking. I can't do it. That's some scary mess. Anyway, this video has been so long. So for those of you who have made it to the end, I appreciate you. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe.